All right, I'm back. And I'm going to demo what I call a non-developer's toolkit, which is basically the tools that I, as a non-technical person, add on to Claude Code to use it in a way that is effective for the type of work that I do. And so before I go into it, I want to give a little bit of context, which is that as of 3 months ago, I had never shipped a line of code myself. I am not a developer by trade. I have worked in startups and venture capital for the last decade, so I would call myself builder adjacent in that I've worked with a lot of engineers. I have a lot of friends who are engineers, so I kind of speak the engineering speak, but I was never, submitting pull requests and doing all that kind of stuff myself until now. And so the last 3 months have really changed how I work across many different dimensions, and that's what I'll talk through a little bit today. And all of this started back over Christmas break, when I started seeing tweets like these, where non-technical people were all of a sudden starting to make their own websites and vibe code their own automations that seemed to actually be working. And so I thought to myself, okay, this Claude Code thing that I've been hearing about from the engineers for the last 6 months, it's maybe time that I actually download it and start playing around. So sure enough, the first day back from Christmas break, I went to code.claude.com and went to the quick start guide and figured, let's get going. Of course, I saw the very scary, make sure you have a terminal or command prompt open. And, I knew what a terminal was, but it was still a little bit foreign and new to me, and I hadn't interacted with it much. But after a couple hours, like I think Sam was saying, I was able to figure things out, brute force it. And since then, it's been basically borderline addiction, where I'm just so excited by building things for myself and for others. And it really, as I said, has changed the way that I work. One very acute moment of this recently was this weekend when I was with a friend who deals a weekly poker game for, those are all a snippet of all the projects I've worked on, just to give you a rough sense of the variety. But as I said, this weekend I was with a girlfriend who deals poker for a bunch of her friends once a week, and she was just complaining how it's really hard to reconcile chips at the end of the night and figure out cashing out and who's paying whom. And so she mentioned she'd used a couple different apps, but that they were pretty buggy. And so I said, hey, let's just make you one now. And so within about 15 minutes, a few back and forths with Claude, we basically didn't quite one shot, but we vibe coded this app. There were things we went back and forth on where we realized that if the chip counts didn't add up, it was still going through. So we added errors, we added rebuys, and we basically just customized this to be what she wants for her game. Deployed it as a progressive web app, and boom, she's up and running. I've got it on my phone. She's got it on her phone. I'll give it to you if you want it. But this was just a kind of moment of wow, the power of this, where 3 months ago, I could not have imagined building this myself in a day or a week, let alone doing this in 15 minutes. And so, yeah, needless to say, the way I work and think about software development and even knowledge work generally has changed a lot. Now, I want to talk a little bit about Claude Code as a tool and how I think about it as a non-technical person, because you've seen, what Jackie was doing in the command line. I talked earlier about terminal, and this is running Claude in terminal. And so Claude Code, by definition, is a CLI tool. So it was initially built to be interacted with in places like this, which are not really that familiar for those of us who are not technical. We're used to UIs that have drag and drop and that have buttons to click. And we can get a little bit scared and stuck pretty quickly in environments like this. And so how I have found using Claude works for me is layering tools on top of it that let me have that more user-friendly interface that I, as a non-developer, need. Of course, I've had to learn the terminal and command line to an extent, but I've found that there's a few tools in particular that have made my life a lot easier. And so that's what I'll show you today in case they might be of interest to you. So actually, before I go into the tools themselves, I'll show you what they are, which are Vibe Kanban is one, Obsidian is another, and Super Whisper is the third one. And I will just show you a demo that puts all three into action. All right. And so this is Vibe Kanban. So you'll notice that this looks kind of like the ChatGPT or Claude web UI, where it's got this whole left sidebar where it has all of my historical projects. And it has an interface that is somewhat like, ChatGPT, which is kind of how I'm using it here. But if I go down into an actual product that I've built, like this poker app, you can see that there's the code and everything, right? So it has the Claude code functionality, not just the functionality of a chat application. And so the demo that I'm going to run right now is a dog naming demo. So I have a dog, his name is Harvey, and I've told Claude that I want to get another dog. It's going to be a girl. I want to give her a name. And so I've gone back and forth with Claude a little bit, and we've come to kind of a stopping point on the project. Now, before I run this demo, I'm going to show you the other tool that Claude is going to write to here, and it is called Obsidian. And so you'll see Obsidian is very simple as a software tool. It's just a collection of markdown files that have kind of a nice folder structure. It almost looks a little bit like Apple Notes. And this is just a demo sort of Obsidian vault that has all sorts of files. But Obsidian is really powerful because Claude Code doesn't have memory across different sessions. And so you can use Obsidian as kind of like the brain for your Claude Code, where it can read from Obsidian and it can write to Obsidian. And I'll show a demo right now of it writing to Obsidian, which is something that I do very often when I'm using Claude Code. And the last tool that I mentioned I would demo is Super Whisper, which is a dictation app. I know Sam said he's still got his fingers available with his little ones, but I've got kids that are a little bit older, so I don't even have my fingers available. So I need to be dictating at all times. I'm also just a person who thinks out loud, so I like to talk at my computer rather than type at my computer. So that's what we'll do here. So let's see. Okay, Claude has come up with some names. All right, I like these names. Oh, okay, we're good. I like these names and the direction here, but I don't have time to work on this project right now. Can you write this to a new file in the notes folder in Obsidian and just summarize like what we worked through here, what the context was, and what the next steps are? So we'll run that. And then what we should expect to see is in this notes folder in Obsidian, Claude is going to create a new file and populate it. And it'll take just a minute. But this is a workflow that I do very often because I'm often working on things that I want to be able to remember in a structured place. And I found that going through old Claude sessions can be a little bit of a dig. There we go. Harvey new dog names, gives us the date, the context, what we worked through. And there you have it. So that's one tool that I use very often. So kind of in conjunction with the other tools that are here to make Claude Code work for me as a non-developer. That's all I got. Just wanted to kind of showcase, that Claude Code is really, really powerful. And with that comes a lot of flexibility, which is great, but it also means it takes a little bit of groundwork to set it up and find tools that work for you. But if you do, you'll be able to harness its power very quickly, and hopefully you learn something. Thanks, everyone.